please?
Can you hear me okay, or do you want me to turn it off?
Okay, I think we got it.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment meeting for Friday, December 15th. Can you see where that is actually?
Member Rivet, can you just turn your microphone off just until you speak? We're just getting some feedback coming. Thank you.
Okay. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are working in the lands traditionally occupied by the Indigenous peoples. Indigenous people continue to care for this land and continue to shape our township. We show our respect and will continually honor the treaties that were signed as we consider our decisions and actions. This morning, there's a public meeting scheduled for 2 consent applications and 7 minor variance applications. I'll briefly summarize the procedure that will be utilized for this meeting. First, the Secretary Treasurer will advise the committee as to when, how, and to whom notice of each of the hearings, each of the applications was circulated. Next, each of the applications will be considered separately. Planning staff will advise as to the purpose and effect of the applications and provide any other information that's relevant. The Secretary Treasurer will summarize any correspondence on file, and from there, the applicant may make a brief presentation if they so choose. Following that, the public will have an opportunity to speak to the applications being considered. After the public forum, the committee will then debate the applications on the proposed applications and consider a motion to pass, defeat, or defer the decision for the applications. The consent applications being considered this morning are B23-35 and B23-36, which are concurrent. Both of them under the name of Breckbill, and they are for part of Lot 14, Concession B, part of Lot 2, Plan 35R, 16-172, the Township of Georgian Bay. The minor variance applications being considered this morning are A22-16 for 4 Island 1700 in Georgian Bay Shore, A23-51 for 103 Whites Falls Road, A23-52 for 20 Island 130 6 Mile Lake, A23-53 for 112 6 Mile Channel Road, A23-54 for 7864 Go Home Lake Shore, and A23-55 for 22 Island 645, and A23-57 for 2380 Harrison Trail. I have a resolution moved by Member Matthews, seconded by Member Rivet. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes of November 17, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And you can see the online app. So, okay, thank you. Thank you. The motion is carried. Our next resolution is moved by Member Jarvis and seconded by Member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment adopts agenda dated December 15, 2023. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried. Okay. I would also ask, are there any no pecuniary interest? No declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. I would ask the Secretary Treasurer to advise regarding applications.
Notice of each of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, 500 meters, or 800 meters, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may have also been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act 1990.
Okay, thank you. And we are going to do the consent according to this application. Okay. Our first applications this morning are consent applications B 23-35 and B 23-36. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, committee. May I ask that I share my screen? Sorry, just bear with me here. As stated, these applications are B 2335 and B 2336 for the property being part of Lot 14, Concession 8, being Part 2, Plan 35R 16172 in the Township of Georgian Bay. On your screen this morning is the location map of this property subject to these requests. The applications for the creation of easements was received by the Township on October 25th, 2023. The requirement for the creation of the two easements were a result of previous consent applications relating to O'Hara Point Road that were approved by the Committee of Adjustment on June 9th, 2023. The original applications were for the creation of easements, right-of-ways, and an extension to a private road known as O'Hara Point Road. Upon finalizing the consent process for the 11 applications, it was noted that excuse me, that 3 properties at the southerly point of O'Hara Point Road still required access from the private road from the property in the name of Catherine and Aaron Breckbill. The 2 consent applications for the creation of easements to provide ingress and egress to the properties known municipally as 4647 and 4595 Severn River Shore. The easement to be created for 4647 is to be approximately 299 square meters, with the easement for 4595 Severn River Shore to be approximately 355 square meters. Both easements will have a width of 6 meters and the exact dimensions will be confirmed by a reference plan. These 2 properties will now be required to obtain new municipal addresses as they will be accessing the properties from O'Hara Point Road. There's some photos here of the northwest from the road allowance along the new section of O'Hara Point Road that the Committee of Adjustment approved, and the end of O'Hara Point Road looking southeast across from the unopened road allowance portion, which is crossing onto the Breckbill property. There are some natural heritage features that should be taken into consideration when this property is developed fully. There is a deer wintering stratum 2 area, high to very high archaeological potential, and there is a fish habitat type 2. As the property is vacant, future development on the property will require a stage 1 archaeological assessment and potentially environmental work at that time. The creation of the 2 easements is proposed on the northerly portion of the property, so up in this area. And there is to be no development other than the right-of-ways at this time. The creation of the easements are consistent with the policies in the provincial policy statement. The creation of the easements are in conformity with the provisions of the District of Muskoka official plan and the Township of Georgian Bay official plan, and the creation of the easements do meet the intent of the zoning bylaw. Therefore, staff are recommending approval of the applications as presented.
One letter was received. One letter was received from Hydro One stating they have no comments or concerns at this time. One letter for each consent application was received from the District of Muskoka stating with respect to conformity to the Muskoka official plan, district staff have no objection in principle to the application as currently proposed. And one letter was received from Enbridge regarding the proposed severance. Enbridge Gas Inc. does have service lines running within the area which may or may not be affected by the proposed severance. Should the proposed severance impact these services, it may be necessary to terminate the gas service and relocate the line according to the new property boundaries. Any service relocation required due to a severance would be at the cost of the property owner. Also, should future gas service be required to either the severed or retained parcel, a request for gas services needs to be submitted to the district office.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And Member Jarvis.
Just curious, I see there's a part 3. Is that something that might come before us later on? And it is highlighted when you do, when I see the part 2 on the I guess the survey, but there's part 3 is attached to it. I'm just really just curious.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Part 1 is to be the easement to the property to the west.
Yeah,
And part 3 is to be the easement to the property to the east, with part 2 being part of both of the easements.
yeah. So part 3 might come before us, or has
It
it
is
already?
before you.
Part 3?
Yeah.
Is part of this? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, now I better understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee? Okay, seeing none, I'm sorry. Okay, Louise,
Sorry.
you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Just through you, Mr. Chair, to the planner, it did mention that there were actually 3 properties at the southerly point that still required access. So just to confirm, these 3 properties are now being addressed by the 2 easements at 4647 and 4595, which, so we have, there's 3 properties, but only 2 of them will require new municipal addresses. I'm just confused.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Actually, to Member Rivet, all 3 will require municipal addresses. The one that is subject to the easements at the present time does not have a municipal address, which is owned by the Breckbills, which is the subject of this application. But all of them will require new municipal addresses off of O'Hara Point Road as opposed to Severn River Shore.
And to confirm, are we dealing with all 3 or just 2? Again, I'm just a bit confused.
It's 2
Sorry.
easements required across the subject property, which is the Breckbill property. So there are 3 properties, yes, but there's only 1 property that is going to have the 2 easements on it. There's already an existing driveway to the property.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If we're good with that, are there any further questions? All right, seeing none. We have 2 resolutions here which are almost the same. I'll read them together, especially the conditions. Moved by Member Rivet, seconded by Member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby grants provisional approval for consent application B23-35 and B23-36 for the creation of an easement to provide ingress and egress to lands described as part of lot 14 and 15, concession 8, also known as 46, 47, and 4595 Severn River Shore, as shown in Schedules A and B attached to this decision, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the easement as indicated in Schedule A and B attached to and forming part of this decision. The easement shall subsequently conform with Schedule B. 3, that a reference plan is completed and a digital copy and a hard copy filed with the Township Planning Department, or an exemption from the reference plan be received by the registrar. And 4, that pursuant to section 5342 of the Planning Act, and the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of giving the notice of decision. Notice, section 53, subsection 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate. And 5, that the owner provide a draft transfer prepared by solicitor describing the legal description of the dominant and servient lands subject to the creation of the easement. That the owner of 4595 Seven River Shore and 4647 Seven River Shore obtain a new municipal address and 911 emergency number on O'Hare Point Road. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, you can see the motion is unanimous and the application is approved. You. Our next application is minor variance number A22-16 for 4 Islands 1700 Georgian Bay Shore. To the planner, please.
Through the chair. The purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of an E-shaped floating dock and associated ramp. The subject property is a peninsula with an area of approximately 20,000 square meters or 5 acres and a lot frontage of approximately 135 meters on Georgian Bay. The property is designated waterfront within the township and district official plans and zoned Concession shoreline residential island. The lands are characterized by granite rock and natural vegetation. No sensitive natural features exist on or about the property, which is developed with a detached dwelling and dryland boathouse with a deck having a legal non-complying status. The applicant is requesting a dock and ramp with a maximum projection of 28 meters, whereas 20 meters is permitted within the Concession coastal waterfront community, and a maximum cumulative width of shoreline structures within 10 meters of the high water mark of 31 meters, whereas 20 meters is currently permitted. The proposed dock is a floating pipe dock that will be attached to the end of the existing deck located on the shoreline. The ramp has a width of 1.8 meters and a length of 7.3 meters and will provide safe access to the proposed dock. The main and largest section of the dock has a width of 3.65 meters and a length of 15.24 meters. All 3 dock fingers extending from the main dock have a length of 9.75 meters, 2 have a width of 1.2 meters, and the third, located at the end of the dock, has a width of 2.4 meters. The applicant is unable to construct an E-shaped dock for mooring of boats and water-based recreational activities that complies with the maximum cumulative width of 20 meters, as the legal non-complying dryland boathouse and deck already have a cumulative width of 20 meters. The applicant has advised that the fingers on the dock are facing south rather than north for boat protection, water depth, and safety reasons. The proposed dock complies with the minimum setback, maximum width, and finger length requirements, and is well under the maximum permitted cumulative surface area for docks. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variances to the zoning bylaw being requested and are recommending approval of all subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
5 letters of support were received from the Withers family, Dana Turnbull, Jonathan McCain, David Drinkwater, and Alexander Jones Davies. Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to speak to this application? Okay, I see we have Mr. Cameron on Zoom. Please identify yourself and proceed. Can you hear us okay, Mr. Cameron?
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. Can you turn on your video or?
There we go.
Very good. All right. I can see on the screen you're Lauren Cameron. You're the representative for the applicant.
Yes, I am. I think the application stands for itself, given the existing shore deck and boathouse. There really is no other area for this dock. And I think the planner has expressed the issues in total, and that's why we're asking for the variance.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And do we have any? Oh, Member Jarvis.
Thank you. I just need to make the observation. Recently, we had another application come before us from Gain in Go Home Bay, where there was significant opposition to the length of a dock on the shoreline, and as a result, that dock was reduced in size. And here we are looking at a dock that is significantly longer than what is allowed under our bylaws. I can't say I'm going to be very particularly critical of it. It's probably something that's necessary given the water depth, but it is a significant size, bigger than what is recommended by our bylaws. And as I said, we recently had an issue up in Go Home Bay where a dock that was not that much larger was cut back as a result, or I believe it's cut back. I'm not sure what the proposal was, and something we should keep in mind.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. And just so we're on the same page here, that there is no precedent set, or we don't use precedent. Each application is considered on its own merits, and if you're familiar with that particular area, there's a very, very shallow water body that surrounds that area, which is different than other applications that we've seen in the past. So I think we need to look at this application on its own merits.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I did note that maybe it was necessary because of the water depth, but
Yeah,
still, it's still significant.
Extremely shallow there.
8 meters is not a small length,
But
just to be considered. That's all.
good. All right, no problem. Are there any other questions or comments from committee members? Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shania, can you just explain to me where the 28 meters is? I'm looking at the drawing and I'm seeing 15.24 plus a ramp of 6.7. I'm having a tough time with my math getting to 28 meters, or am I looking at the wrong aspect of that? Our finger is 9.75 meters long plus 3.66 for the other. So I'm not seeing 28 somehow.
Through the chair, we measure projection from the water's edge. So the 28, I'm going to share my screen just so I can explain it a little better and give you a visual. So just bear with me here. Go. So the 28 meters is measured, well, it's shown here on this image. I'm circling the measurement.
Okay.
It's measured from the water's edge to the end of the dock. So that would be how we measure the projection.
Okay. Even though there's probably something like 10 meters of water in there. It's not the actual dock itself. So. Okay, thank you for that clarity.
Okay, thank you. I noticed Member Predko has the hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Yep, just trying to so 2 questions, and while we have I guess the first question is it looks like there's already been work done to build the dryland boathouse as well as the deck. And Shania, or through you, Chair, could Shania please confirm that that is because it's a legal non-conforming, and they were able to get a building permit based on that?
Through the chair, it is my understanding that they did get building permits to replace what was the existing deck and dryland boathouse, and that they did have that legal non-complying status.
Okay, and as well, it looks in the pictures that the floating dock already exists on the property, and they're, I guess, ready and eager to have this approved and move forward.
Through the chair, the dock has been removed for the season, but they did have it in a different location earlier this year, and did apply for their variance to allow for it when they found out that a permit could not be issued.
Okay. So
And-
my only other observation on this, it goes back to, I think it is a large dock. There are 3 fingers. I think, it's whether or not it's minor, it's still a generous request. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I just have one question for the planner on this. When Georgian Bay was experiencing extreme low water levels back in around 2012, there was a bylaw put in place that allowed projection of a dock to be such that it would allow for I believe something like 1.2 meters of minimum depth at the end of the dock. Does that bylaw still apply to docks on Georgian Bay?
Through the chair, staff would have to look into that.
Okay, no, and I believe from the pictures that were supplied with the correspondence here, that the main driving force behind this is the water is extremely shallow in that area, hence the dock fingers pointing south and so on, in order to get a minimum water depth for boats. Okay, seeing no more questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Moved by Member Predko, seconded by Member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A22-16. 1, a maximum projection of approximately 28 meters, whereas section 4.1.13.2 permits a maximum projection of a dock and ramp of 20 meters. And 2, a cumulative width of shoreline structures being 31 meters, whereas section 4.1.13.3 permits a cumulative width of 15% of the total of one frontage or 20 meters, which is more restrictive. And that subject to the following conditions. First, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And 2, that this decision applies only to the dock and ramp as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And 3, this decision expires 3 years from the date of Chief Planner accepting the studies if building permits have been issued for the development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay, we have, there you go. All right, so the motion is carried and the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next application is A23-51 or 103 Whites Falls Road. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, The purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of a detached garage in the front yard with an increased height and containing a secondary dwelling unit. A site visit was conducted on November 15th. The subject property has an area of approximately 17,400 square meters and 200 meters of frontage onto Whites Falls Road. The lands are characterized by pockets of exposed granite rock surrounded by mature trees, and the lands are designated and zoned rural while not containing natural heritage features. The proposed detached garage contains 3 bays having a width of 10.36 meters and a depth of 7.01 meters. Construction has started because the applicant has received a building permit for a 1-story detached garage with the same footprint and in the same location. The applicant is proposing a building height of 5 meters, whereas the zoning bylaw permits a maximum height of 4.5 meters. The height of the detached garage will be less than that of the dwelling, and the building will be screened from Whites Falls Road by the abundance of mature trees and natural vegetation in the front yard. The applicant is also proposing a secondary dwelling unit in the loft of the garage that is to be located within the front yard, whereas the zoning bylaw requires the accessory building to be located in the rear yard. The intent of accessory buildings containing a secondary dwelling unit being located in the rear yard is to ensure that the building remains subordinate and exclusively devoted to the principal use and building on the lot. The detached garage exceeds the minimum yard requirements for the principal building on the lot, being 20 meters for the front yard, 7.5 meters for the rear, and 5 meters for the side. The dwelling unit is limited to a size less than half the footprint of the detached garage. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variances to the zoning bylaw being requested and are recommending approval for the reasons outlined throughout the report, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
No written correspondence was received.
Okay, is the applicant present, and do they wish to speak to this application? And do we have Mr. Giannini on the line? No? Okay. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we have member Rivet. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, just a question to the planner. It says the detached garage exceeds the minimum yard requirements. Does that mean it meets the requirements? It's within the requirements? I don't know. I just want clarification. Exceeds the minimum yard requirements. So what does that mean exactly?
Through the chair, in lamest terms, it means it complies.
Thank you.
And in
Okay,
fact,
that's all. Thank
yeah.
you. If you could just say that complies with the requirements, that was good. And I'm assuming the original building permit that was issued was within the 4.5 meters?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Those are thank you.
sorry.
Those are my questions.
All right, thank you, member Rivet. Member Jarvis.
Again, a comment out of curiosity, where in relation to this proposed garage, this garage that is now being built, is the main building going to be? Can you give that to me on the survey? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's in the list of drawings that were supplied.
It says something about proposed building lot, but I don't see where the building was.
It wasn't a really clear drawing, but yeah, if you look northwest in that drawing, you'll see the primary residence.
I mean, it's logical, obviously, that it would be sort of behind relative to the road, right?
Yeah.
But if you can't pull it up, it's okay. I just curious, like I said, no
Yeah,
big deal.
it's there. Oh, there's the picture there, but as
Through
you
the-
can see, it's really hard to.
It just says new building existing.
Through the chair, I have the site plan that was provided by the applicant shown on the screen.
Yeah.
And just to kind of explain a little better, I know it's a little faded. So if you are facing the detached garage, the dwelling is to the left and set back further from the garage.
Appreciate it.
All right, are there any further questions? Member Matthews?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just sort of point of clarity for some. I was on the site. It's well treed from the highway. You can't see the highway. The highway can't see either building. And there's really no other place for the main structure to go back with the rock outcropping. So I think it's an appropriate application.
Yeah, I certainly don't have any other questions at all. Okay, and just one final question then for the planner, and certainly I think we're all in agreement here that it's appropriate for that site. Just the timing of that, was the original building permit issued for the sleeping accommodations above the garage? I'm just trying to understand why the application is coming forward, asking for it now.
Through the chair, a building permit was applied for a detached garage, which complied with all the provisions in the zoning bylaw. And then a second revision was brought in, which showed the loft in the dwelling unit. And obviously, because they're adding a loft, they also increased the height. And at that time, they were advised that if this is the route that they wanted to pursue, that they would need a minor variance application to facilitate that development.
Okay, so I guess it was just a timing issue then. You know, obviously the LVLs and everything that support that are in place, so the adjustment was made to the building permit early on.
Through the chair, the building permit was issued, and then we received a revised set of drawings with this new proposal that you're seeing today.
Okay, all right, thanks very much. All right, that's all good. If there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Resolved by Member Matthews, seconded by Member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A23-51. 1, a detached garage with a building height of 5 meters, whereas section 4.1.15A permits a maximum building height of 4.5 meters. And a secondary dwelling within an accessory building located in the front yard, whereas section 4.25B permits a secondary dwelling unit in an accessory building provided it is located in the rear yard. And subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate for or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And 2, that this decision applies only to the detached garage as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear in the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And 3, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of Chief Planner accepting the studies if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you, and everybody goes online. The motion is carried. The application is approved. Our next application is A23-52 for 20 Island 130, 6 Mile Lake. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, the purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a new detached dwelling and permit 3 docks. The subject property has an area of approximately 3,100 square meters and 123 meters of frontage on 6 Mile Lake. The lands are described as a peninsula and form part of Island 130. They are designated waterfront within the township and district official plans and zone 6 Mile Lake residential. The lands are relatively flat, grass covered, and a mix of mature trees are scattered throughout. The property is developed with a detached dwelling, 3 accessory buildings, and 5 docks, 2 of which are to be removed. The shoreline contains type 2 fish habitat, which is not considered critical or highly sensitive. The maximum number of docks permitted on a property is determined by the lot frontage. Lots having a minimum frontage of 244 meters are permitted to have up to 4 docks, whereas lots with shoreline frontage of equal to or less than 122 meters are permitted to have 2. The lot frontage of a peninsula property is the greatest distance between any point on the front lot line and any point on the rear lot line. Therefore, the surveyor calculated a frontage of 123 meters, which is not an accurate representation of the length of the property's shoreline. The lands have 283 meters of shoreline. The intent of limiting the number of docks is to prevent shoreline from being overdeveloped and disturbed, as well as reduce the visual impact of development from the water. The 3 docks are spread out across the west side of the peninsula, with 2 being relatively small, and all complying with the permitted width and length requirements identified in the zoning bylaw. The existing dwelling has a legal non-complying status as it was constructed in the 1930s and does not comply with the minimum front yard setback for the 6 Mile Lake residential zone. Therefore, the variances being requested for the construction and expansion are to be evaluated under Section 45(2) of the Planning Act, and the tests for an application for permission to expand under this section are A, whether the application is desirable for appropriate development of the subject property, and B, whether the application will result in undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and neighborhood. When applying these tests, only the proposed expansion may be evaluated for undue adverse impacts. In order to refuse the application, the undue adverse impacts of the proposed expansion must be demonstrated by objective evidence and must be sufficient to override the property owner's right to reasonable flexibility, evolution, and expansion. As the property is a peninsula, there is 1 front lot line being the shoreline and 1 rear lot line, which is the lot line that is shared with the neighboring property owners. The applicant is proposing to reduce the existing front yard setback on one side by 1.7 meters to facilitate the proposed expansion. The proposed dwelling has a width of 14.63 meters, which represents an increase of 8.39 meters, whereas a 6-meter increase is permitted. To achieve the desired gross floor area on 1 story, while limiting the reduction to 1 of the front yard setbacks, the width of the dwelling needed to be increased to this extent. Although the proposed detached dwelling is replacing an existing, having a legal non-complying status, and whether the proposed expansion conforms to the official plan is not an applicable test under the Act, I would like to bring to your attention that the detached dwelling is well within the maximum gross floor area, height, and width guidelines identified within the 6 Mile Lake official plan policies. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variances to the zoning bylaw being requested and are recommending approval of all subject to conditions. The committee can either approve or deny variances regarding the addition of a 3rd dock. However, to deny the minor variances regarding the proposed detached dwelling, the undue adverse impacts of the proposed expansion must be demonstrated by objective evidence and must be sufficient to override the property owner's right to reasonable flexibility, evolution, and expansion. The committee can defer the application to a later date if additional information is required to come to a decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
No written correspondence was received.
Thank you. Is the applicant present and do they wish to address the committee? Good morning.
Good morning. Through your chair, my name is Victoria Hoffman. I'm here on behalf of Flow Drawings and Design. Our address is 3 Violet Drive. The property owner, Ryan Visser, is also online, but I'm here to kind of speak on his behalf. Shania's presentation is great. One quick thing I kind of wanted to run through was that essentially with the new structure, we're trying to center it on the property. So on the one side, we did get closer, but on the other side, we've actually increased our setback. So tried to pull it away from the lake. And then with the width, so that kind of addresses the setback issues. And then from the width, we had a gross floor area we were trying to achieve. Obviously going in any other direction was going to cause a setback concern, and going up was going to cause building height concerns. So this is kind of where we landed because we were trying to tuck it into the unused side of the property. We did attend site, like the property owner and myself with multiple contractors. The existing dwelling, like because of the log nature of it, and some of them were pines or pine logs and they've been patched before. The structure, like it was deemed by a couple contractors that they can't really fix it. And the proximity to the water and stuff like that and foundation, it would have just been a bit of a nightmare. So essentially then we sat down and we determined like the structure needs to be replaced. What is it going to be replaced with? And the docks, the floating docks are being removed. 3 stationary docks have existed since he bought it in 2018. Shania and I also went through some aerial imagery and we were able to confirm that it was older than that as well. And then we also have an MNRF registration permit for the replacement of the retaining wall and a septic verification that the existing septic system will support the new dwelling. So nothing will need to change there. I'm here to answer any questions if you have some.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application? Yes. I'm sorry. Could I ask you to come up to microphone and turn it on and then maybe just start? And the reason for that is for those that are watching from home on the Zoom, they wouldn't be able to hear you. So if you turn it on and then start by identifying yourself, name and address.
Hello, Terry Richards. I live at 1178 Haskets Drive, and I look east into this shoreline or island property. So I have absolutely no complaints except a few questions about the dock work on the lower southeast point, which I believe is the middle neighbor's docks.
Through your chair, I mean, you're talking
So-
about the bottom?
These ones here,
So
is the applicant asking for these to remain
Just
in
for
the
clarity,
water?
Shannon, do you have a site plan that shows those docks on it that we could all be looking at?
Like, I didn't
So
think
this-
this was Visser's dock work.
yeah, let me point it out so everybody.
Oh,
can
okay.
see the picture. So that's clipped, but you're talking about the one that's below that, right? So the
Yes,
one
exactly.
Below that is actually the property owner's, or sorry, the neighbor's dock, and it's just over onto his property line.
So does he have a legal easement for that, or how does that work?
So, okay. Should I?
I mean, I guess I'm just nosy. I don't know.
Through the chair, I can pull up aerial imagery which shows the neighboring properties' docks. From my recollection, south of this property, there is a dock which straddles the lot line that they share. And there's also a dock on the other side that is owned by the neighboring property owner as well.
So
But
is the dock that you're describing part of this application or is it not?
through the chair, no, that dock is from my understanding, not within the property owner's ownership.
Okay.
And is actually in the neighboring property owners.
Okay, are you good with that explanation?
I've looked at it for years. There's not much complaint. I just didn't understand if he was trying to finalize his docks,
Okay.
how that got missed, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay, so.
and I was confident it wasn't his docks, and yet when I saw the property line, I'm like, So it was just merely a
Okay,
inquiry into what was happening, that's all.
very good. And I see the applicant has his hand up. Perhaps you could add to the conversation. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could add some clarification. So my next door neighbor, who is Dan Leal, the small finger dock that's there, he uses, but it's actually on our property. If you look at the property line to the south, it actually, his dock, his main floating dock, which is in a bigger blow up, if you look at our plan, is actually 2 feet onto our property, which he didn't know. It doesn't necessarily matter. I don't use that finger dock, but when the Ministry of Natural Resources was there, the small finger one on the south of my plan, it's a cribbed dock from an unknown origin, and they told me that I cannot touch it. So it just sits there. Nobody really uses it. As member of the public there across the way probably knows, it's been there for a long time. And for me to take it out, I would have to go to the MNR and get an approval to take it out. So we're just saying, can we keep it because it's been there?
Yeah, I understand the issues with crib docks, yes.
Okay, sounds like we're all good with that. Any other questions or comments from the applicant or the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public session of the application review and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And Mr. Jarvis, Member Jarvis.
Thank you, and I kind of warned the planner about this. Do we have any, right off the top, I don't think this really applies to the actual specifics of the application, but I see retaining walls in a couple locations on this property. That to me constitutes shoreline alteration. While it is not part of this application, I am curious to know if there's any proposal to relieve any of that that work that's been done.
Through the chair, the property owner did get a permit with the MNRF to do all that shoreline alteration. So I don't think it would be fair for us to ask that they undo that work, considering it was done in consultation with the MNRF.
And we love the MNRF. Okay, thank you very much.
I can add to that too. It was replacing an existing retaining wall, and part of the reason why it needed to be replaced was because when the wall fell, it was hurting the, I guess his cabin suffered some consequences from it too. So that's why it was based on a replacement.
I understand. I don't necessarily agree, but I understand.
And Shania, just on that train of thought, we're talking about the three docks here. If these docks were in existence for a substantial period of time, back to, you were saying before 2018, is there not some carry forward on that that allows them to be legal non-complying, or do docks become legal non-compliant?
Through the chair, for any structure to be deemed legal non-complying, there has to be evidence or proof of such, and typically we do rely on aerial imagery or impact data to as evidence. And in this case, the aerial imagery was understanding that as you go back in time, the aerial imagery gets worse. It was hard to confirm what exactly existed and at what times. However, back in 2018, this current bylaw that we're working with today would have been applicable, and they still would have been subject to a maximum of 2 docks under that zoning bylaw or today's zoning bylaw.
Does that third dock become legal non-complying if it existed, even though the bylaw only allowed 2? Does the third one become legal non-complying if it's there before 2018?
No, through the chair. The dock would have had to exist before the bylaw came into effect. And I believe that was in 2014.
Okay, and we have no way of confirming or denying.
Through the chair, there was aerial imagery, and I can't remember from what time, which showed the third dock in question being the L-shaped dock today. However, it didn't show an L-shaped dock. It just showed one linear dock. And then having looked at the plans provided as well as recent site photos, it looks like it had been recently constructed, expanded in, or however you want to word it, into this L-shaped dock. So hence why we brought it here to committee.
And just finally, then, if this application is approved, that third dock becomes legal non-complying, or is it?
If you approve a minor variance, it is complies with the zoning bylaw. You're achieving compliance when you apply for a minor variance. You're putting something into compliance.
Okay.
Because they received certain permissions to allow for that.
The non-complying is not appropriate then, so it's just complying. Okay, excellent.
That is correct.
Very good. Any further questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Member Breckbill.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just have a question for our Director of Planning, Mr. Whitlib. And I know it's not directly applicable to the application before us today, but we have another application today that's in a similar situation where it looks like the age of the property and the size of the property the septic that's on the property likely doesn't conform to our current standards for a 30-meter setback from the shore. And how should this impact our planning decisions on this? If there's a concern that the building that's being requested may not support the septic, and I know it's a building issue, but it's just a cart and the horse, chicken and egg question. Like, should the owner be aware that they have will potentially have a challenge with constraints for septic before they get their planning approval, or is it just part of the process?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Predko. So you are correct. It is a building detail, and as part of that, building staff are circulated. We haven't received any comments, I don't believe, on this application from building staff. If there was a concern or an obvious concern, it's expected that that would be flagged by building staff and identified. Having said that, the building permit review for any additional development would also trigger septic review. So should it be determined that there were, as a result of the additional development, should it be determined that improvements or changes are needed to the septic system, such as reconstruction and that sort of thing, then we would have to look at the appropriateness in conformity with the zoning bylaw. Not sure, and one of the things we'd have to consider is whether legal nonconformity would be appropriate given the environmental considerations, that come into play here. So long story short, if there's sort of an issue downstream in the process with the septic, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm not aware of any issues at this point. We know the applicant and their agent is here and may be able to speak to what investigations or considerations, if any, they've given.
Thank you. I think Shania wants to answer too.
Shania, you had something to add to that?
Through the chair, so this application came to you as a result of one of our pre-application consultations. And through that process, we looked at the septic system location and we did ask questions about its capacity. And we did determine that as the applicant said, that the septic that is there is capable of supporting the proposed detached dwelling. But we did look at the details of our septic system provisions, and they do have a letter to that extent.
Okay, thank you. And again, just for clarity going forward with other applications, the location, size, or performance of the septic system is not under the purview of the Committee of Adjustment. Certainly something that's addressed by Planning and Building Department, but not the Committee of Adjustment. So we'll just bear that in mind as we go through the review of other applications. Okay, if there is a question from Member Matthews, comment, please proceed.
If I may, I was just, I remember Ms. Hoffman talking something about they did have septic approval or they had investigated. So Shania has answered that. But I'd also, again, would like to congratulate Ms. Hoffman and some drawings that we can see and understand, and it makes our decision so much easier than a little pencil sketch on the back of a napkin. So thank you again.
Very welcome. That's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Member Schmidt.
I'd like to echo that comment with regard to the detail. Much appreciated. And I just want to note that there is some comments made with regard to the existing structure that's there. I commend the Visser family for putting lipstick or making a silk purse out of what was there when they purchased. That building has been there for as long as I've been on the lake and at different states of disrepair. So they beautified the property significantly and understand why they would want to invest in an appropriate dwelling to support that property. So thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Member Rivet, seconded by Member Schmidt. Be it resolved that Township Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A23-52. One, for a total of 3 docks on a lot with 123 meters of shoreline frontage, whereas section 4.1.3 permits a maximum of 2 docks on lots with shoreline frontage of equal to or less than 122 meters. And 4.1.3.2 only allows for a 3rd dock for each additional 61 meters of frontage. And 2, a reduction to the existing legal non-compliant front yard setback from 11.5 meters to 9.8 meters, whereas section 4.11A, B, and E do not permit the expansion to encroach further into the existing front yard. And 3, a dwelling width expansion of 8.39 meters, whereas section 4.11E permits an expansion of 6 meters, and subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And 2, that this decision applies only to detached dwelling and 3 docks as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And 3, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of the part of chief planner accepting the studies if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. The application is approved. Our next application is A23-53 for 112 6 Mile Channel Road. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, the purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of a new detached dwelling in a similar footprint to the existing, permit a dock with an increased width, and recognize the location of the existing legal non-complying and water boathouse. The subject property has an area of approximately 5,500 square meters with 62.84 meters of frontage onto 6 Mile Channel near the mouth of the Severn River. The lands are designated waterfront within the township and district official plans and zoned shoreline residential type 1. A site visit was conducted on June 7th of this year. The property is characterized by dense forest and granite rock. The lands are developed with a detached dwelling, dryland boathouse, 2 docks, a shed, and a privy. There is a steep slope made up of granite rock between the dwelling and the shoreline. The lands do not contain or abut sensitive natural heritage features for consideration. The existing dwelling has a legal non-complying status, and the variance requested for the reconstruction expansion of the dwelling are to be evaluated under Section 45(2) of the Planning Act and subject to the 2 tests. The applicant is proposing a dock having a maximum width of 4.8 meters, whereas 3.1 meters is permitted. The maximum permitted length of a dock in the SR1 zone is 15 meters, and a maximum of 2 docks are permitted on properties having less than 122 meters of shoreline frontage. The width and length restrictions permit a dock with a surface area of 46.5 square meters. This dock is rather small with a length of 4.8 meters and a total surface area of 23 square meters. The applicant is also proposing to reconstruct and expand the detached dwelling in a similar footprint, which reduces the front yard setback by 0.77 meters. Only a portion of the screened-in porch will be encroaching into the front yard. The main wall of the proposed dwelling will be set back a minimum of 6.43 meters from the front lot line. The proposed dwelling has a gross floor area of 98 square meters, whereas the existing has a gross floor area of approximately 87 square meters. The proposed increase in gross floor area is permitted under Section 411E of the zoning bylaw. The vegetation in the front yard and the height of the proposed dwelling will remain the same. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variances to the zoning bylaw being requested and are recommending approval of all subject to conditions. Only the proposed expansion that is located closer to the water may be evaluated for undue adverse impacts. In order to refuse the application, the undue adverse impacts of the proposed expansion must be demonstrated by objective evidence and must be sufficient to override the property owner's right to reasonable flexibility, evolution, and expansion. The committee can either approve or deny the minor variance regarding the dock. To be clear, there is no decision to be made regarding the existing in-water boathouse, as it has a legal non-complying status, and the purpose of recognizing the location of such through this application is to have documented compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Has there been any correspondence on this application?
No written correspondence was received.
Is the applicant present, and do they wish to address the committee on this application? Okay, we have an agent online. Could you please identify yourself to the committee?
Good morning, members of committee. My name is Jennifer Vita, and I'm a registered professional planner. I'm the agent here on behalf of the owner. I do not have anything to add. I am here to simply answer any questions the committee may have with regards to the applications.
Okay, thank you. Is there any member of the public present or online that wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or concerns. And we will begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a comment, and I guess probably directed to planning. I did a site visit there. There was no signage and there was no staking of the proposed cottage. I know we've changed our signs, but that's a whole other subject I don't want to talk about right now, but there was no indication as to where the property was. So, and I couldn't find a very good 911 number either. So perhaps in the future we can make sure there's some decent signage.
Thank you. I share that, having gone there, and one would believe that a different cottage was the one under consideration. You had to prevail. You probably could have found my footprints, though. I did find the other place that was there. Any other questions or comments? Member Jarvis?
To the planner, I just note that the dock that is a part of this application doesn't seem to have any natural access. Now, I didn't get out to the site, and maybe those that have been there can help me, but is there access to the dock, or is it like just a swim platform that you access from the other dock?
Yes, you walk. There's a stairs that it doesn't show very well, but
there is access.
It's
okay.
It's on the shore side of where the boathouse is, and it takes you down.
Got
yeah,
it.
it's steep incline.
Good fun. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Just one additional question for our planner. The setback from the shoreline in a property like this, if you're looking at it from a plan view or from a drone, it's very close. If you look at it from how long it would take you to get from the front of the cottage to the water, it's quite a different calculation. So is it strictly the distance back from, if you looked at it vertically? Like, you know, member Jarvis asked how long it takes to get down to the dock. You know, there's a lot of steps and a lot of walking to get from the cottage to the dock. Is that considered part of the setback or not?
Through the chair, to answer your question, no, it's strictly just the measurement, the distance between the high water mark and the building wall. There's no consideration for slope. If that answers your question.
Very well. Question from member Jarvis?
Sorry, just in the initial description of the property, there's a note. There's a privy noted. Where's the privy in the survey? And is the privy still in use?
Still there.
Through the chair, I did include as part of my report an attachment which shows the existing property conditions. That is the survey. And if you would like, I can pull it up on my screen, but the privy is located quite a distance from the existing dwelling. and closer to the existing driveway on the lot.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
yeah. Are there any further questions or comments regarding this application? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Jarvis, seconded by member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A23-53 and recognizes the location of the in-water boathouse. One, that a detached dwelling with a front yard setback of 4 meters, whereas section 4.11E permits the existing setback of 4.77 meters and no further encroachment into the front yard. Two, a dock with a maximum width of 4.8 meters, whereas section 4.1.13.2E permits a maximum width of 3.1 meters. And subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And two, this decision applies only to the detached dwelling, dock, and in-water boathouse as indicated in Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear in the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And three, that this decision expires 3 years from the date of the chief planner accepting the studies if building permits have not been issued for development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. And the motion is carried. The application is approved. Our next application is A23-54 for 7864 Go Home Lake Shore. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get into this report, I'd like to apologize, first of all, for the errors that were in my report that has been pointed out to me by my friend over there. So I'd just like to result to the recommendation that in number 2, my recommended condition, it says proposed dryland boathouse. It's to say proposed addition. And number 3 recommended condition is actually to be removed. That should not be in there. I apologize. I guess I'm not good at multitasking 2 reports at the same time. So I just want to point that out.
That's why we have member Jarvis.
That's
to
right.
Proofread that, yes.
I guess I need to be good for something.
Yeah.
The subject property subject to this application is a water access only property having a frontage of 213.97 meters on Go Home Lake and is comprised of 0.72 hectares. At the present time, according to MPAC, there is a single detached dwelling, a cabin, and a boathouse. The existing dwelling was constructed in 1956, with both the cabin and the boathouse being built in 1960. As you can see on the screen, the proposal is to add an addition to the existing cottage. The existing cottage can be recognized as being legal non-complying due to when it was constructed, and therefore section 411E of the zoning bylaw does apply in this case in order to construct the addition. Some photos of the property that were provided to me. So this is the area I'm just looking at. I don't know if you can see my cursor there. This is the area of the property that the addition is going to be. As you can see, there are a number of mature trees on the property as well as some granite outcroppings. The variances being requested are, like I stated, under section 411. 411A, they're requesting an increase in the maximum gross floor area from 67.72 square meters, which is required, and to the proposed of 123.93 square meters with the addition included. Section 411E1, the maximum increase in the gross floor area can only be 70%. The owners are proposing 78.73%. And the third one being section 411E number 2, the maximum increase in the width of the proposed addition and existing dwelling can only be 60% total. And the owners are requesting 82%. For applications to extend a legal non-conforming use under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, the consideration is to be based upon both desirability for development of the property in question and the impact on the surrounding area. And due to the vegetation and the number of trees that are on the property, staff are recommending approval of the application based on a review of the relevant policies, as the proposal is consistent with the PPS and does meet section 45(2) of the Planning Act, and in my opinion, represents good planning.
Thank you. Has there been any correspondence in this application?
No written correspondence has been received.
Thank you. Is the applicant present and do they wish to address the committee on this application?
Hello. My name is Victoria Hoffman. I'm here on behalf of Flow Drawings and Design Inc., 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. The property owners, I believe one property owner is online, and then Anna and Dawn are also behind me. This one, you know, the 727 square feet of the existing cottage just no longer fits the needs of this family. Kind of addresses the GFA. It's only 8% more than what we were asking for. I think it works out to be like 64 square feet or something like that, according to my math. And then the width, the way that we treat this dwelling is this expansion would have to actually be off the rear, but because of the peninsula shape of the property, we're just getting into that kind of how the bylaw actually reads that. If you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. And I see the applicant's present. Is there anything you wish to add to what Ms. Hoffman has presented?
No, not at this time. She's doing a good job.
Okay, and we have someone online. Do you wish to add to the comments? No? Do you have that? Okay. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application? Okay. Then I'll bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And do we have anyone in the department? No hands up. Okay, Member Schmidt.
Through the chair, when I initially saw the application, I thought the numbers seemed significant. And I just sometimes wonder if maybe it's time to have some of these numbers reviewed a little bit, because this isn't a big ask. I think the total square footage will be 1320 when it works out in the wash. I don't certainly understand why this type of investment is required in today's world, but just wonder at some point when those numbers need to get revisited, maybe let this process be even a little bit easier than it is today. Just a comment, but thank you.
Thank you for that. If there are no further questions or comments, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Member Schmidt, seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved, the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A23-54 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 7864 Go Home Lake Shore to facilitate the construction of an addition to the existing dwelling as follows. Zoning bylaw 2014 section 4.11A, gross floor, maximum gross floor area, from 67.72 square meters to 123.93 square meters. Under section 4.11E, maximum increase to gross floor area from 70% to 78.73%. And under section 4.11E, maximum increase in width from 60% to 82%. The above noted approval is subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And two, that this decision applies only to the proposed dryland boathouse as indicated on Schedule A. Addition, sorry. We'll blame that on Member Jarvis for not amending that. Any other variances that may appear in the schedule that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you, and we're good online. All right, the resolution is carried, the motion is carried, and the application is approved. Thank you. Our next application is A 23-55 for 2 Island 645 VanHoogenhuize. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, the purpose of this application is to facilitate the construction of a new detached dwelling in the same footprint as the existing, with an increased height and gross floor area. A freestanding deck and walkways will also be added. The subject property is an unsubdivided island located between Roberts Island and Honey Harbor. The property has an area of approximately 2,000 square meters above the high water mark and an approximate frontage of 95 meters. The lands are developed with a single-story detached dwelling, 3 accessory buildings, and 2 docks. An abundance of mature trees, grass, and pockets of granite rock characterize the lands. Within the township and district official plans, the island is designated waterfront and abuts types 1 and 2 fish habitat, as well as the Roberts Island wetland. The island is zoned shoreline residential island type 1, exception 51. The site-specific zone states the maximum size of existing buildings and structures shall be as legally existed and legally constructed, and therefore the applicant is seeking relief to allow for an increase to the gross floor area by 30.32 square meters, an increase to the building height by 1.87 meters, and the addition of a freestanding deck and walkways, whereas none currently exist. The proposed freestanding deck and walkways comply with the size and height limitations outlined in the zoning bylaw. Impact data indicates that the existing detached dwelling was constructed in 1950. The purpose of the site-specific zone is to prevent new larger development on the island because it is undersized and located within a provincially significant wetland. The intent of the site-specific provision is to reduce the potential of flood hazards and prevent negative impacts on the provincially significant wetland. The proposed detached dwelling will have the same footprint as the existing and will have a minimum opening elevation of 178.3 meters as required throughout the township's planning legislation. The increased height is needed to accommodate the minimum opening elevation requirement and the addition of a half story. A building height of 5.41 meters is proposed, and the SRI 1 zone permits a maximum building height of 8 meters. Views onto the property are limited due to the abundance of natural vegetation along the shoreline. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the application and are recommending approval subject to conditions. The committee can either approve or deny the relief being requested. If additional information is required to come to a decision, the committee may defer the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Has there been any correspondence on this application?
3 letters of support were received from Alan and Peter Waffle, Alex and Lauren Jessup, and Christine and Vivian Joyce.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to address the committee on this application?
Just need a button. Victoria Hoffman from Flow Drawings and Design Inc., 3 Violet Drive. I'm here to represent the property owner. I'm not sure if he's online or not. No, okay. The contractor I was also expecting, but I think this one's pretty straightforward. We're working off the existing footprint. We did have to increase the gross floor area about 325 square feet. Same thing, just, living space needs. They want to use this on a more primary basis at the 6 months a year type deal. The height we had to the old building, what the contractor was supposed to speak to was the existing building. Like we had actually originally applied for a building. There's an open building permit on this property to renovate it already. That was, I think, in 21 or 22 that was issued. These things take time, and after a couple contractors coming to site, it was found that same thing. The cost of fixing these buildings or the structure was going to be to well exceed the cost of replacing it, and you were going to be ended up with kind of a patched together building. And then the other thing, a point of concern that came up when we went to go start working on the pre-consultation phase was the height. We didn't meet the opening elevation. So that kind of encouraged the building height concern, as well as getting that extra square footage, but on the same footprint. And then also the decks and walkways are kind of to try to be able to navigate around the building now that it's raised. Guys have any questions? I'm here to answer them.
Thank you.
Actually,
is there any member of the public present that wishes to address this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring the application before the committee. And Ms. Hoffman, just one quick question on your statement there. When you were saying that in reviewing the application, that the opening height was one of the things that triggered some changes to be made. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me, please?
yeah.
What is the opening height?
It might be a better question for these guys, but it's the opening elevation bylaw. So we have to, our floor level has to hit 180 point something,
Okay,
and we
so
were
it's the 177.4 plus
a certain floor level elevation. Yeah. So I think it has something
That
to do
makes
that
a lot
water
of
doesn't.
sense.
Yeah. And I think we were about, I think it was like 28 inches lower. So we're bringing the floor up to meet that bylaw. And I think that one's kind of important. So
that makes a lot of sense. Especially in view of.
they can correct me if I'm missing something, but
Was that a property affected by the high water that we had in 2018, 2019, or are you aware?
the property owner didn't mention that. I know they had kind of talked about their shoreline a little bit, and there was a dock when I went there back in, I think the first time I was there was in 2020, 2021. One of their like piles had been ripped out type deal, but I don't know if that had to do with water levels or ice or whatever. I'm not sure.
Okay, and it's a moot point, I guess, at this point. So anyway, that's it. Okay, so what's the application before the committee? Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Member Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair Hill. And my concerns were directly in relation to that. The survey, I think that was presented to us, and I may have missed some detail. It shows, I believe, the high water mark. When I try to enlarge it, everything gets very blurry. But that is the high water mark that is on the survey, that light gray line in from the shoreline. Is that correct?
Yeah, normally it's the dash line.
To the chair, I can confirm that the high water mark is the lighter of the two lines shown on that survey. The bold line is the water's edge currently.
Correct. Okay. So, and then looking at the photos, that's where my concern is that this is a low-lying island, just generally speaking. So there was concern about the entry level of this cottage relation to the high water mark. Is that correct? I need clarification.
Through the chair, this development proposal was submitted through or brought to planning staff's attention through the pre-application consultation process. And at that time, planning staff did go over the minimum opening elevation requirements in our zoning bylaw and in our official plan. And yes, it is a requirement. It is to protect a habitable space from flood hazards.
Right. And it was determined that this opening elevation is above or below?
The proposed detached dwelling will comply with the minimum opening elevation. My understanding is the existing is actually below.
Yeah.
So this would be an improvement.
So we're remediating a situation.
Through the pre-consultation application, I had kept the floor level the same, just out of habit, and then that's when it was highlighted to me that it needs to go up more than what we were proposing. So.
Just to clarify then, that the new building that's going in will be above that. Okay. Could be an interesting time if the water goes back up, but that's their business, I guess. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Any additional questions or comments from the committee, and anyone online have a question or comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'll read the resolution. Moved by member Jarvis, seconded by member Rivet. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A23-55. An increase in the gross floor area from 30.32 square meters or by 30.32 square meters, whereas shoreline residential island type 1 exception 51 zone permits the size of the existing dwelling that has legally existed. An increase in the building height of 1.87 meters, whereas Shore Road Island 1-51 zone permits the size of existing dwelling that has legally existed, and the addition of a freestanding deck and walkways, whereas none currently exist. And subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the detached dwelling, freestanding deck, walkways, as indicated on Schedule A, attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedule that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. That this decision expires 3 years from the date of the chief planner accepting the studies if building permits have not been issued for the development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Good. The resolution is carried. The application is approved. Thank you. And our final application this morning is A23-57 for 2380 Harrison Trail. To the planner, please.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll be presenting application A23-57 for 2380 Harrison Trail. Here's the location map and just an overhead view of the subject lands. The lot size is 4,208.7 square meters, and the lot frontage is 52.12 meters. The purpose and effect, similar to Deb, I have to make a correction that I had made in my report. In my report, I stated that the applicant is seeking an increase in height of 6.73 meters and an increase in ground floor area of 222.96 square meters, where in reality, the applicant is seeking the following. The proposed detached garage has a height of 6.75 meters, whereas section, sorry, I'm getting cut off here. 4.1.15A of the zoning bylaw permits a maximum building height of 4.5 meters, and the proposed detached garage has a ground floor area of 139.29 square meters, whereas section 4.1.15D of the zoning bylaw permits a maximum ground floor area of 112 square meters. The proposed development conforms to all other requirements of the zoning bylaw. For test of the minor variance, as detailed within the staff report provided to the committee, the planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance does conform with the four tests of the minor variance that are listed below on screen. Some site photos. So these are just photos of the location of the proposed detached garage from a couple different angles on the subject property. As you can see, it's heavily vegetated around the proposed location, which would shield any view of the detached garage from neighboring properties. Couple more site photos. On the left was the nearby hydro easement that was identified. Something to note, as per the Ontario Building Code, any structures or buildings must be set back 3 meters from the easement, whereas the proposed building is set back more than 4 meters from this easement. And then on the right side there, the intersection of the private driveways extending from Harrison Trail. And on that photo, the proposed detached garage would be located on the right side of that photo. Based on the information submitted and a review of the provincial policy statement, the District of Muskoka official plan, the Township of Georgian Bay official plan, and the Township of Georgian Bay zoning bylaw, it is staff's opinion that the proposed minor variance application is consistent and in conformity with relevant policies and provisions and represents good planning. Therefore, staff are recommending approval of the application as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Has there been any correspondence in this application?
One letter of no objection was received from Diane Suwala.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to address the committee on this application? Please step up to the microphone, turn the little red light on, have a seat. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Stephen Suwala, I am the resident, and I'm only here if you have any questions for me. I really nothing further to add to it.
Okay, excellent. And is there any member of the public present who wishes to address the committee on this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring the application before the committee for any comments or questions. And do we have any online from any members? No hands up? And no questions locally? Member Jarvis, how are you feeling?
Thank you for preempting my hand going. I really appreciate that. You can read my mind, I think. No, my concerns are not with regards to the application per se. They're with regards to other things on the site, and I've already talked to the building department about it, so I'm fine.
Okay. Then seeing no questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Breckbill, seconded by member Schmidt. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A23-57 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 2380 Harrison Trail to facilitate the construction of a detached garage with a height of 6.75 meters and a floor area of 139.29 square meters. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions. That the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. That this decision applies only to the proposed building as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear on the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued by the developer. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. The motion is carried. The application is approved. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a further resolution here, moved by member Rivet and seconded by member Jarvis. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a comment or a question from member Rivet.
Yes, please. I just wanted to clarify something. There was a matter came up in our the last meeting where there was a tie vote on a matter and it was defeated. There was some question as to voting and how we vote. So I just wanted to make sure that was resolved, right? Every member of the committee just has.
We have had a discussion and we will have a follow-up discussion on that as well as a separate item, member Rivet, but I don't think it needs to be part of this particular committee meeting. So if you just hang in there, we will get back to you on that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll read the final resolution, be it moved by member Rivet, seconded by member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 11:37 a.m. until January 12th, 2024 at 10 a.m. or the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried.